Good evening, everybody. Sorry about the couple of minutes delay. We just experienced a few, ironically, a few technical problems there. So a very warm welcome to Tech Her Word for It. Thank you so much for joining us on this really important matter. My name is Jo Prosser and I'm Technology Director within the Customer Tribe at Sky Betting and Gaming. Let's cut to the chase. There are not enough women in technology roles. There are only 22% of roles at SBG that are filled by women. We want to do better and we must do better. There also aren't enough women coming through the pipeline into tech roles. And I've done some anecdotal research recently. Bear with me because it is very tenuous, but my son, for example, he's doing GCSE at A-level. I said to him around the dinner table the other day, how many people on your course, James? He said 25. I asked him how many were girls. He said 1. That's 4%. Another friend, so I use my friends, you can see, for anecdotal evidence. Another friend has a daughter who's doing a GCSE computer science qualification. There are 30 people on that course. Her daughter is the only girl. Another friend has a son. He's just finished a computer science degree at Bristol University. This is a little bit better, 20% were female, but you can see that there aren't enough women now and the pipeline is looking a little bit woeful. So this isn't great for the future of women in tech. The good news though is that it's very realistic to assume you can get into technology at any age in various different ways. And the amazing women on our panel today are going to illustrate just that because none of them came through a traditional computer science route. So there are 4 key objectives for this evening. So number 1, to celebrate the amazing women that you see here who work in tech roles at SBG. There are so many more, but clearly we couldn't fit them all on the panel this evening. So that's the first objective. The second is to show the breadth of roles that exist in technology. You may have seen a recent article on the BBC. In fact, I posted it myself on LinkedIn only yesterday, talking about not enough women in coding. I disagree with that. There are not enough women in technology in general. And so every one of the ladies on our panel this evening has a different role to play in technology. So we want to showcase that. We also want to highlight some of the difficulties that women can encounter when working as a minority in tech. It can be hard sometimes. And then the final objective is to get feedback and debate from men who work in tech based on what they see and hear this evening. And that's going to be really fascinating. So let me just run through the agenda so you can see what to expect over the next couple of hours. So first of all, you will be hearing me babbling on for a few minutes. We'll start the panel in a couple of minutes' time, and I'll be talking to each of the ladies on this panel about various questions around their experience in technology. We're due to have a break about 5 to 7, so you can go off to the toilet, you can get a drink, do whatever you want to do. We'll come back at 7 and the panel will look completely different. You will see our men's panel. And as I said earlier, they'll be commenting on the things that we're about to talk about in the next 45, 50 minutes. And that really is not to be missed. That will last about 30 minutes. We'll have another quick break and then we'll bring both panels back for you to ask any questions that you might want to ask. So please do that through the LinkedIn event. So thank you very much. What we're going to do first of all is introduce the ladies on the panel. So we have Beth Gildersleeve, who is Managing Director of Technology at SBG. We have Chloe Berry, who is a graduate engineer here at SBG. We have Famine Nawaz, who is a Senior Business Analyst. We have Lisa Walsh, who is Test Manager. And then we have Rachel Morgan, who is Head of Engineering and Test. So they're some of the brilliant women that work here at SBG. So I'm going to start off with Beth. So full disclosure, Beth is my boss. So I've got to be on my best behavior. Beth is a really inspirational woman in technology. And I think, is it fair to say, Beth, that your role is the most senior in technology at Sky Betting and Gaming?
It is, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to start off then by telling us about your role?
Sure. Thank you for that introduction, by the way.
You can pay me later.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm the Managing Director of Technology, as Jo said, in Sky Betting and Gaming. So I'm kind of responsible for all the technology disciplines that we have here at Sky Betting and Gaming. So that would be delivery, business analysis, engineering, test, architecture, operations, service. So there's about 500 people that work in technology across Sky Betting and Gaming. And these people are fantastic technologists that are really passionate and they're responsible for delivering and iterating our great products that we have to customers and making sure that they're safe, stable and secure and available. But the main thing for me is thinking about the providing clarity and strategy around where does technology look, what does technology look like now for Sky Betting and Gaming, and where does that take us in the future? So thinking about innovative and emerging technology, but also making sure that our technology community has got fabulous development, career progression opportunities, growth, and that the whole experience of working in technology and at Sky Betting and Gaming is the best it can be.
So that's a really brilliant role, really varied. As I've said, it's a real senior role in technology. So I think be very interested to understand how you got into technology, Beth, and then particularly what your route was through to MD of Tech.
Yeah, no problem. So I didn't do a degree in computer science or technology. I did it in foreign languages, so not programming languages, but foreign languages and business. And I think I was very unclear when I went to do my degree of what I wanted to do after that. I didn't know what job. I'd never had a career plan or a 5-year plan of what I want to do. So I came out of university and just started looking for roles, and I started working for the post office in their head office in internal communications. So my responsibility was to do internal communications to all the post office branches in the whole of the UK network, to tell them about material that they needed to display or new product launches that were coming. And that was great because that was like working in a big organisation with lots of different teams and disciplines and just learning, I guess, how to work in a big organisation. And then from there, I kind of found an opportunity to work in human resources and really enjoyed that. So I was dealing with sick pay, maternity leave, recruitment, got such exposure to different people. So this wasn't just recruitment in the head office, it was recruitment within the post office branches. So it was really busy, fun, and just great at meeting different stakeholders. And I really loved this. And I thought, oh, this is the career for me. I want to stay in HR. But then about a year or so, a couple of years of being in there, they decided that they were going to centralise recruitment because they had different regional offices at that time. They decided they were going to create a national human resource centre. And I had a bit of a decision point around, did I want to relocate because it wasn't going to be in Leeds anymore, which is where I was based, or I wasn't going to relocate, or did I need to have a real think about what I wanted to do and what opportunities were there? And a fabulous leader in the post office, a female actually, she took me to one side and said, Beth, I think you shouldn't go do work in centralised HR. I think you should move to this fantastic new IT directorate that's been created, that's going to have loads of opportunities. I can see your potential, and you should just forget about HR, which was a bit of a shock. And I thought, oh, is she telling me I'm not good at HR and to do it? But actually, now I reflect on it, it was somebody that obviously believed in me and felt I was a trusted person and had some future potential. So I took her advice and I went to work in this brand new IT. It was IT as it was then. We weren't using terms like technology or digital. It was pure IT. And this was about creating at this point. So I'm talking about 1999 now. So
showing your age, Beth.
I'm showing my age, but I feel like I need to do with some of the language I'm using. But back in it's quite recent really when you think about it. But the post offices were doing all their weekly calculation of their like what transaction they'd done, like the cash accounting was done pencil and paper. There was no like technology in place. So there was the program of work to introduce electronic point of sale. So basically tills for all the transactions and the cash account to be done electronically. And you've probably heard of it because it's been in the news, and it's Horizon. And I was part of that program, nothing to do with working with Fujitsu third party on that stuff. But that's the system that you've probably heard of in the news. But I was asked to go work in this new function, and it was about service management. So it's setting up kind of methodology on how to manage end-to-end delivery of IT systems for customers. That was all the processes, the design, everything. And I was asked to go take the calls, actually. I worked on the service desk. So taking the calls from the post office staff or postmasters, for them ringing up to say, I don't know how to do this, or I've got a problem with that, and just basically guiding through the system and what to do. And kind of that was my first introduction to IT. And it got me used to kind of working with a system and understanding the ins and outs of it. And then from there, I just moved into different roles within service management. So I went to do incident management, so analysing the incidents that were coming through, problem management, looking at like the technology problems that were coming through, setting up an internal complaints team, setting up a 24/7 service desk. So loads of opportunities just came presented in my way, and it was like fantastic. And I worked probably in that environment for a good 8 years, and then I kind of had an opportunity to work in the NHS. I thought so the NHS was on a massive transformational program to kind of reduce paper in the NHS and create, again, through technology, create ways to communicate and integrate and interact with all the different care settings in the whole of in England and Wales and Scotland. And kind of got some opportunities to work in service management there, and could see the ambition about reducing paper in the NHS. So again, went back into service management, and from there I ended up getting involved in lots of, I'm not going to do my whole career history, but I got lots of opportunities to move out of service, moved into more of a test and deployment perspective, and then into program delivery. And through that I got different exposure, and then I kind of progressed in my career. So I left the NHS as a program head, so I'd had some exposure at leading big multi-million programs, really ambitious, where I was setting strategy right through to execution and delivery. And that was fantastic. And I learned so much. And there was a lot of politics with a capital and small p in that space, got used to dealing with robust business cases and bureaucracy and hierarchy, and just got loads of experience and opportunities there. But then this now moving into like the 2017, agile delivery and agile development was a massive thing, and it was really hard to do. It got some experience of doing that in the NHS, but it was very slow to deliver because you had to get, it's taxpayers' money you're spending. It's a different environment, and I really wanted to get into more of a fast-paced environment that was using agile development techniques, and agile was really kind of at the heart of everything people were doing. And that's where I came across Sky Betting and Gaming, which was a totally different kind of turn of events for me, different industry, and I started off there as a head of technology. And I guess through that, I've ended up from head of technology to director of technology to managing director of technology. And that's just about me having kind of using the toolkit and experience and skills that I've learned along my way, and just kind of seeing opportunities where I think I can help with developing strategy or leading teams, or, you know, bringing the experience of making things get delivered and some rigor around that. So kind of that, I think, hopefully helps, without going into too much detail, about kind of the career trajectory I took.
That's absolutely fascinating, Beth. And I think coming back to the worry about the proportion of girls who are going through traditional educational routes, then you're showing that actually you started quite late in your career in tech and you've got really far, which is amazing. And I think some of the key things that I wrote down that you said there, and actually I do think the common themes, irrespective of whether you're a man or a woman, is you had someone who believed in you, and I think that's always really important in any role. And you moved around, you took risks, and you grew sideways, not necessarily going up. And I think there's some really key themes. So I like that. Never knew you started off in recruitment and HR. So yes, that helps because you're good at people. So what do you think is the most difficult thing about being a woman in technology?
I think you touched on a lot of this earlier. Sometimes it's about being in the minority. And I mean, as it happens, I've been in technology for over 20 years now, but that's right, isn't it? Yeah. There's been periods in my career where I've been seen as, Beth, you go make the coffee. Beth, you take the minutes. You know, that's earlier on in my career. And that's been a bit of a challenge around the perception because you're the only woman in a room. But I guess as I've got more experienced in my career, I think sometimes being the minority means it's sometimes hard to be heard, and that necessarily isn't a female thing, but sometimes it's hard to have a voice and have your perspective heard, or your viewpoint, and kind of sometimes you have to say it louder, say it in a different way, and that's been quite a challenge. But I guess as you get more comfortable and confident in an environment with the people you're working with, it becomes a lot easier, I guess, to say, actually, I don't think anybody's listening to me. I need to make this point. And it doesn't mean my point's right and I have to be heard above everybody else, but it's sometimes about feeling valued and that you've got a contribution to make. Yeah, understood. And so what advice would you give to women who want to get into technology? I think if you think technology is for you, don't be don't be thinking it's just about developers programming coding, because it's not. You know, there are a lot of people that technology, that is a big part of technology, but there are so many roles, and I've kind of talked about a few that I've been through. I think find somebody that works in technology, ask them about their experience. You know, what does that entail? What roles are there? Maybe use them to be a mentor, to help you, guide you into like technology and what's the right role for you. So be curious in that respect. Don't be put off that there aren't as many females in technology, because that's obviously a journey we're all on. I don't want my daughter in 15 years time to say I can't work in technology because I'm not a man. You know, I want it to just be the norm, and we won't be having panels like this in the future, hopefully, because technology is for everybody. And I guess see it as a challenge around, actually, I can break through this, I can break barriers, I think this is right for me. There's such a variety of roles to go for it. And also look out for things like training programs. There's a lot of things that people do now around offering training and developing, or apprenticeships. You know, look out for things like that if you think it's something you want to upskill and get in the route that way. But I think the main thing for me is to reach out to people that work in technology and ask them for help.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. And you talked there about breaking barriers, and you've certainly done that. In terms of the peer groups that you operate in, so at MD level, how well represented are women at that level?
Outside of tech or in tech?
In tech.
In tech, probably the peer groups are probably the only one at the moment, but I guess there are other female MDs and CTOs out there that I try to build networks with. But I guess in my current sphere of world, it's probably just me.
Okay, there's so much more I could ask you. Thank you so much for that, Beth. I'm going to move on now to Chloe. Hi, you all right? So Chloe is a graduate engineer, and you are the least experienced in terms of the number of years that you've worked in technology of everybody on the panel. Can you tell us about your role at SBG, please?
Yeah, so I'm Chloe and I'm a software engineer, just a graduate. My daily role involves implementing new products for the business and maintaining the services we currently have. I work in the customer tech and product tribe, and within that, the MarTech engineering squad. We look after a range of services, one of which is the on-site notification service. As a software engineer, everyone thinks it's just coding, but it's not. There's so many other things that come into being a software engineer. We help with like designing the products and defining requirements. We have to test things and monitor live services. And we also build pipelines for deployment. Every day is different, and the work is just so interesting.
Brilliant. And tell us how you got into technology, Chloe.
So my path's not as impressive as Beth's, but I'm just starting out. I entered university with a sociology degree. I was always interested in coding and tech, but I thought with the path I'd chosen, it just wasn't possible. In my second year, I was offered the opportunity to do a more quantitative version of my course, where I learned to analyse big data sets using coding and R. I really enjoyed the challenge of that. So when someone told me about the grad scheme at Sky Bet, I jumped on it. The grad scheme teaches people, even with no prior coding experience, how to code. So it's taught us literally everything from the ground up. And I don't think I would have got into coding without it. I've come such a long way since January.
I think I'm going to pick you up there, Chloe, because you said yours is not as impressive as Beth's. I think yours is impressive, your story. It's just shorter. And I love the way that you pivoted from a sociology degree into tech. I think that's absolutely amazing. And so if we think about both Beth and Chloe, the two ladies that have spoken so far on the panel, none of them have gone through a traditional route, which is brilliant and gives me hope that women can get into, and anybody actually can get into technology at any point. How do you think, Chloe, we can encourage more women into tech?
I think you need people at all levels of recruitment. I think you need women writing ads. I think you need them there reading applications and interviewing candidates as well, because I think you need that perspective. I think you need that with all kinds of demographics as well, but it's need more women. I also think we should carry on running grad schemes like the one at Sky Bet, because people don't necessarily choose computer science as a degree, but that doesn't mean they can't learn to code. I work with people that don't even have a degree and they're coding, so anyone can do it.
Thank you. And have you ever encountered any issues, problems, blockers as a woman who works in technology?
Not me personally, everyone in my squad's really nice and lovely. But I did witness something during some graduate training. The training was on communication and leadership. And the trainer at the time, we were discussing how to adjust your communication style to other people. Another grad, Fiona, brought up a really interesting point about how people, when they communicate in the workplace, people take on one of three roles: an adult, a parent, or a child. And women usually assume the child role. And I thought that would have been a really excellent time to discuss that and really talk about that. But she was quickly dismissed by the trainer, saying we don't have time for it. And when women are 50% of the population, it's a bit upsetting because it doesn't feel like an issue of time. It feels like an issue of prioritization. And that's the kind of things you experience.
Okay, and how many of the women are in your squad, Chloe?
Oh, it's just me.
And how does that make you feel? Do you feel I'm in a minority, or do you feel completely included and subsumed in the squad? How does that feel?
I am very much included, but I am also aware of my position as the minority. But I am in the fortunate position of also having a group of grads who I can go to and spend time with, and 50% of my year are females, so that's really nice to have.
Oh, that's brilliant. There's the hope. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing your story, Chloe. I do love that one. It's brilliant. Okay, so Famine. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Jo. Thank you for inviting me to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love your story. But I'm going to ask you first. So you're a senior business analyst. Tell us a little bit about your role.
Yep. So I act as a bridge between the business and sort of strategy, and then sort of the technical world as well. So a lot of my time is spent translating business needs, speaking to stakeholders, understanding what sort of makes them tick, what they want, and then translating that into technical requirements that architects will design to, engineers will build to, and testers will test against. So I get that full exposure and looped around the software development lifecycle, which is so exciting.
Okay, and your journey into technology, was that a traditional route?
No. No.
Tell us about that, Famine.
So I was always into tech. As a kid, I absolutely loved computer games. I really enjoyed, well, I probably annoyed my parents a little bit because I would take apart VCRs and TVs and stuff and try and build robots. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. And myself and my sister actually learned how to code when we were in our teens. So it was really exciting. We ran our own website, and it was, we were really passionate about it from a young age. So when it got to sort of university, and when you're in that sort of time in your life, you kind of have like a path laid out in front of you, and you think, right, I've got to do A to B to C, which is usually go to uni, then get a job, and then you progress your career from there. So I went to uni, did computer science. I started computer science, and
can I just interject, because it's just struck me. So you did computer science. How many females won your course? I'm not expecting exact numbers, but can you remember roughly?
Yeah, it was a while ago, but there was a couple of hundred people on the course, but I think there was two women, including myself. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interject, please.
No problem. So I went to uni. I went into my second year of uni, and unfortunately we experienced an illness in the family, which meant that I had to make a really tough decision, which was to drop out of uni and take care of things at home. While I was sort of in that time, I luckily had some skills. I'm a musician, so I was able to draw on some relationships that I had through being a musician, and I taught music to kids in schools, which was super exciting for me and really fulfilling. But it really made me question sort of where my career was going to go, and I was still trying to decide whether or not to go back to uni. And a friend of mine actually recommended that I start working at a call centre, which I did as a stopgap. And I ended up being there, working for that company for about 6 years. But I didn't stay in the call centre. I ended up sort of moving around. It was definitely an interesting time. I look back on that time and I'm grateful for a lot of opportunities. Unfortunately, the bad side of it was that we did go through quite a few reorgs, but what that did create was opportunity for me to sort of spread my wings, learn new skill sets. So I actually moved off from working on the phones to being a trainer expert. So I utilise like my teaching skills to teach other people how to sort of take calls and other things. And then I went into resource and planning, which was really interesting. My job title was an analyst there, so I kind of realised I wanted to be some sort of analyst. I realised I like to problem solve, and you can do that as an engineer or a coder, but you can also do that in other ways as well. So I went through another reorg, and I ended up as a test analyst and then a test lead. And then another reorg later, I ended up as a data analyst and eventually as sort of like a continuous improvement analyst. And that kind of led me into sort of the technology side of things. So prior to that, I'd kind of really been working with operations mostly. And then when I started moving over into technology, I realized that, I was a business analyst. I've been a business analyst all this time. And the penny dropped. And I would say that I look back and I think, oh, I did want to be a coder once upon a time. But I think about how fulfilled I am in my current role and how passionate I am about sort of the value that I bring to the people around me and vice versa, that I wouldn't do it any other way, to be honest.
So you like analysis?
Yes.
I heard that. That's brilliant. So, wow. So you did start off in the traditional route through computer science degree, but then you pivoted away from that. And again, so this is a third example of 3 different routes into technology, none of them traditional backgrounds. So that's great. And when you got to SBD, did you come in as a business analyst here, Famina?
I did, yeah.
And now you're a senior. What did that promotion look like?
That promotion was, I guess, a common theme from what Beth and Chloe have said previously is, somebody believed in me. And when I came into SBG, I'd been a business analyst prior to that in technology, just at a different company. And for some reason, I had this horrible imposter syndrome. I did not believe in myself and I had really low confidence. It took my manager at the time to really shake that out of me. And I'm so blessed that I had that interaction with her and that she was able to sort of push me into being able to go for a senior role and feel confident enough in my skill set. And also feel confident enough in the value of my voice. That was something that's taken a long time for me to realise. And I feel like I'm only just grasping that, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, it's an interesting journey, but I would absolutely say that the belief that other people have in me sort of elevates me to fulfill that potential, I think.
Thanks, Famina. I love your story. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Have you ever had any poor experiences working in tech because you're a woman?
Unfortunately, yes. So I would say that as a woman, we kind of experience, or as anybody in a minority group, you experience microaggressions throughout your life, and specifically at work, unfortunately. I had a situation several years ago now where I was actually working with a team of women. We were all quite young. And then we had sort of like a neighbouring team of men. And it came sort of like a work social. And one of those gentlemen actually propositioned me, and I politely turned him down, was very professional about it. But I did feel that there was a massive shift at work when we got back into the office. And it was really unfortunate because I didn't really feel like I had a support network at work that I could reach out to. I'm really grateful because I've got a good network of friends outside of work. So they were able to sort of feed into how best to manage that situation. Unfortunately, the management at work didn't really support me. And looking back, that that drove a few things. It made me leave that team. It actually made me decide to leave completely and do a bit of a skill swap and pivot slightly. Which, do you know what? That was a good thing, because that's what's led me to here. But one thing it's also shown me is that I think it's really important to find that support network wherever that is. And also just like talk about it. You know, you're not alone. You're not the only person that deals with or experiencing these issues. And the reason why I say that is because I actually had a more recent example, unfortunately, of something called heap eating, where as a woman, you say something in a group of men and it kind of like falls on deaf ears, but then, you know, skip a beat and a man says it, repeats it pretty much word for word, and then you've got nods and applause around the room and you're like, what's happening here? Am I in an alternate universe? And that happened to me sort of relatively recently. And there's sort of probably 6 years between these two incidents, and I've learned to talk about it. So I actually spoke to a male colleague about it, and he made me feel so much better. Like, he actually made me feel so much better about this situation. I was so glad that I was able to reach out and find an ally, and that ally didn't need to be a woman. It could have been, you know, it was a man that actually helped support me through that happening. So that was another thing. And then I guess the other part was just recognizing that you have more power and influence than you actually realize, no matter who you are. So whether you're a woman or a man, or, you know, if you identify as any gender whatsoever, you have influence over your immediate circle and your wider circle as well, just in the way that you behave and the energy that you put out there. And then the other part was, you can tell I've been really reflective recently. The other part of it was, I found somewhere that celebrates who I am, and that's SVG. And I am so grateful and blessed for that, because I don't think the previous company that I worked for, where I didn't find that support, they wouldn't do something like this. They wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't have felt comfortable enough to, you know, wear my piercings and celebrate my South Asian heritage at that previous company. But I do here, and that is so valuable to me. And I just want to feed into that culture and sort of encourage other people to feel safe in that way as well.
Oh, that's brilliant. I don't think you realise how inspirational you are, Famina. You might have already answered this, I'm not sure, but I was going to ask you, what do you think is the best thing about being a woman in tech at SVG?
I would say probably that we're pretty powerful. Like, you know, we're badass women, and we can get things done. And I think what's amazing is we lift each other up, just between, you know, sort of like the 5-6 of us here. You know, we just really do elevate each other, and we make each other feel good. We make each other feel valued, and that encourages you to progress yourself and to improve yourself in a way where you feel developed and you feel looked after.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Famina. That was brilliant. Okay, Lisa. Hi, you've been waiting patiently. Thanks very much. Can you tell us about the role that you're in? So in the test discipline, aren't you? Test manager. What does that involve?
Yeah, I'm the test manager in the trading tribe. And if you've not come across testing before, we're the ones that make sure new features work before customers get hold of them. So we like to find problems and the weird stuff that happens when you think outside the box. I think it takes a certain personality type to be a tester. You have to have the mindset of trying to break things all the time. It's quite an analytical role again. It can be technical in places, but it can actually be really fun. And even though I can guarantee nobody on this call right now will have ever heard somebody say, when I grow up, I want to be a tester, it is usually something you fall into by accident and you learn to love. And I think, like, my role at the moment as test manager, it's not too hands-on, but I manage a team of 7 testers who work across different squads, and together we direct the test strategy for our tribe.
You're right, Lisa. I've never heard a single person say, when I grow up, I want to be a tester. Okay, so how did you get into technology? Tell me, was it through a computer science degree?
No.
Okay.
I left school at 16 with my GCSEs. I'd had enough of school, enough of learning. I just wanted to get out, earn some money. I told myself it would just be a year, I'd go back to college, but it wasn't just a year. I got myself a job as a cashier in a bank. So I was serving customers, but a big part of the role was sales too. So I was trying to get people to open bank accounts, savings accounts, credit cards. I was selling PPI. So I'm really sorry to anybody on the call that I wasn't one of the bad ones, but we definitely had targets around selling it. Generally, though, it was a great introduction to the world of work of 16-year-olds, dealing with customers, but the face-to-face thing just wasn't for me. The turning point really was when an unhappy customer took a wee at my desk.
No way, a wee?
Yeah, he took a wee at my desk. That was really the turning point. And I just thought,
I'm not surprised.
I'd do anything to get out of this job. And that's how I got into testing. So the head office, they were looking for business testers or UAT testers to test the changes that were making their way onto the branch systems. So obviously I knew these branch systems inside out, which is the main reason I got the job. But at this point, I had no idea what testing actually was. I had loads to learn. And my love for testing really grew pretty quick from there. I loved nothing more. This sounds really sad. But it was back in the days where you'd get like an 80-page requirements catalogue, and I'd sit there with my highlighter just trying to pull it to pieces and find all the things that had not been thought about, and just secretly like enjoying it. I think I enjoyed this bit more than testing itself. As I got a bit more experienced, I started to see a lot of the overlap between what us UAT business testers were doing and what our IT testers were doing. Didn't seem to make any sense. In some cases, we were repeating exactly what the IT guys had done, but with less fancy test tools and half the pay. So I wanted to get out. I wanted to get more stuck into the systems and integration side of testing. I applied for 2 jobs internally for systems testers role. Both of them I didn't get because I didn't have the experience, which was a proper chicken and egg situation, because how am I meant to get the experience if you're not willing to give it me? So I started looking around externally, but imposter syndrome raised its ugly head. It did really hold me back from applying for what I really wanted, with the knockbacks that I'd had. So I ended up getting myself a job as a defect coordinator, and I'm not even sure that's a role anymore. It sounds proper old school. Wasn't my dream job, but it was a foot in the door to somewhere I knew I could progress, and that's exactly what happened. So I moved into a testing role, managed to get my teeth into some test automation, writing code. I never wrote code at school. I could just about use Microsoft Word, and that was it. And worked my way through the ranks, really. So I ended up in a senior position. I then left the company to take up test management, and been doing that for the last 10 years. And in those 15 years since I applied for that job, which I knew nothing about, with no qualifications, I've worked in the UK, but I worked in Chicago when I was 18 on my own. I took 12 months to comment out in Malaysia when I was 23, set up a brand new test team, which was just such an amazing experience in the workplace. But, learning a new culture and living in a new place was just yes. And the opportunities I've had have been endless, to be honest. And I have worked really hard, but I've not been afraid to take new challenges, taking risks, going into things blindly, to be honest, and just hoping for the best, knowing that I can't fulfill everything straight away, but knowing that I've got the attitude and I'm willing to learn, it's pushed me a long way. And I started an MBA at Bradford University last year. And I got onto this from experience alone and my GCSEs. I don't have an undergrad, I didn't have my A levels. So I think it just goes to show experience can really count for a lot.
How fantastic is that? Apart from the ween at the desk. Apart from that, what an amazing story. And again, I think there's a theme coming through about being willing to be brave, be bold, try different things. And actually, I remember when I started at SVG, and when you start here, they send you around to meet loads of different people. And it was before lockdown, so you actually had to turn up in a public place and try and spot who is this person that I'm meant to meet from their workday photo, which is our HR system. But I digress, and I asked everybody, what do you need to be successful at SVG? And the most commonly recurring theme actually was about building relationships and having allies. But the second thing that somebody really senior said to me, and I've always held on to it, was be prepared to try anything. So don't just be persistent in terms of moving up and staying within your own lane, staying with your own discipline. Try loads of different things and give it a go. And I think this seems to be a theme from this evening, particularly where people have progressed. So that's brilliant. So when you came to SVG as what, Lisa?
I came as a test lead, so I knew a lot of people that worked for SVG already, a lot of friends and old colleagues who tried for years to get me to move. They were buzzing about the culture. It was such a great place to work, benefits, the people, the tech, it had everything. But it was just not the right time for me personally. My daughter was really young. Traveling to Leeds was going to add 2 hours commuting onto my day. I physically couldn't fit in a full-time job and a 2-hour commute every day and keep a small human alive. I couldn't do it all. It was too much. So the timing was just not right. But a couple of years ago, my daughter gets started in school. Everything feels a lot better. And an opportunity came up and my friend referred me for the role.
And how did you progress to test manager?
I worked as a test lead in one of the squads for the first 19 months or so, and the position came up, test manager in a different tribe, which is scary, a step up on its own, but moving into a different area as well was scary again.
But you were brave, you were bold, you took a risk. That's brilliant. So what do you think is the most difficult thing about being a woman in tech?
I think what I found most difficult is being a mum in tech. When I went back to work after maternity, me and my husband had this agreement that if we were ever stuck for childcare, like she'd often throw up at nursery and then they'd ring you up and say, oh, she can't come back for 48 hours. And I'd be like, oh, great. We said we'd take it in turns, to come out of work. We both worked full time. We both felt busy and important, as you do. And we were both really career driven. And when I told my manager this, he said, don't worry, Lisa, if you need to go, you need to go. Don't worry about taking in turns, it's fine. And he was great, really understanding. My husband's manager, on the other hand, when he told him he needed to leave to get our poorly daughter from nursery, he just responded with, isn't that what your wife's for? Yeah. He was like, did he really say that? He worked with a team of men that were quite a bit older than him. Their kids were all grown up, but they came from a generation where their wife stayed at home and looked after the kids and did all that kind of thing. They couldn't quite grasp that this was his responsibility as well. And the funny thing was, we worked for the same company. So we did completely different roles, completely different departments, but ultimately the same person was paying our salary each month. So I think I learned pretty quickly that whilst I've always worked for companies and managers who have allowed me to be flexible with that respect, there were so many industries out there that were so behind the times that I'm still going to be impacted by them, because I felt awful. I felt guilty on my husband saying it's your turn. And as a result, I felt like I had to put my career and my development on hold for just a period of time. I made sure I worked for a company that was 10 minutes away from our nursery. I couldn't have taken that job at Sky Betting and Gaming. It was just too far away. I worked my 38 hours a week. I left promptly at 5 o'clock, without fail. And I felt for the first time in my career, I had to say no to opportunities which needed me to be more flexible, work extra hours, work in different locations, because whilst I had support from my manager and my company was great, my side of the company was great, my husband just didn't have that support he needed. And in turn, this impacted me. And I think I found that really hard.
Yeah, I understand that. Last question for you, Lisa. We've got a men's panel listening, and they're going to be commenting later. What advice would you give them to enable them to better support women in the workplace?
I don't have any horror stories of being a woman in tech, and I feel really lucky to say that, to be fair. I just think it's been lonely at times. Like Beth was saying, when you're the only woman, or you're in an industry that's been heavily male dominated. I had a lot of lunches on my own. I've not been invited out on social occasions. Now I've been left out of things, and I just say to the men to not be afraid to make friends with the women that you work with. I've worked with a couple of guys who've befriended me, taken me under the wing, so to speak, and it all just starts with them asking, what are you doing for lunch today? Or, asking, what do you get up to at the weekend? Just general chit chat. And in times then when I felt stuck with something, or I've needed to ask one of those daft questions that you feel really embarrassed asking, it made it easier because I had somebody to reach out to that I felt like I had a rapport with already, and I had a friendship with, and who I could trust. It's like just having an ally. Like I've said, it's somebody that's going to include you and make sure you're not forgetting about or left out. And I'm not just talking socially, I'm talking about making sure your voice gets heard in meetings, that your ideas are listened to, and that you don't get drowned out by the noise that can come in a heavily male dominated environment. I think it's don't be afraid to befriend the women in the team. We don't bite, we're all right.
Thank you again for being really open and transparent. Some brilliant stuff there. Thank you, Lisa. So the lovely Rachel Morgan, last but not least, how are you doing?
I'm good. I've learned so much from this panel.
It's been brilliant.
It's been amazing. Some really good, interesting, intelligent things.
So thank you for being really patient. So Rachel, you are Head of Engineering and Test in Data Tribe. Can you tell us about your role?
So I feel very honoured. I love my role. I get to be the Head of Engineering and Test for the Data Tribe. And that means I get to work with the fabulous people in our tribe who look after and develop all our great data products. They look after our systems. I have a fabulous team who I work with, and yeah, I really love my role. It's been a very interesting journey to get here, and I was kind of reflecting as I was hearing everybody else's journey, the different paths we've all taken to our roles, but there seems to be a bit of a thread of everybody's learnt a lot from all the roles that they've had.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to take a punt that you didn't do a computer science degree.
No, but I tell you what, I kind of wish I had. I actually studied archaeology and anthropology, but
archaeology,
and anthropology. So, but that was purely because I refused to read the UCAS list of courses. I really felt it was too long, and as an 18-year-old, I just didn't spend time doing it. So I landed in Exeter University, having no idea what archaeology and anthropology was. Seriously, no clue. I spent the first term trying to figure out what anthropology was. I do actually know now. And I loved it. I loved university. I'd had the best time ever. But yeah, it wasn't computer science.
Okay. So what is anthropology, Rachel?
So it's the study of society and culture other than our own. So it's all about people and why people act the way that they do, and what is it about their environment and their social conventions that might mean that somebody is a certain way, they behave a certain way, how they sit, how they talk. And it was just amazing because I have a very conventional upbringing. My parents are in the RAF. I went to boarding school, and anthropology for me pushed me out of all of my comfort zones. I read books that honestly, I'm sure if my parents had realized what I was reading, they probably would have been like, no, Rach, you shouldn't be reading that. But freedom at 18, I was free.
So you rebelled against your parents by studying archaeology and anthropology at university.
Yeah, absolutely. And it started before that, because I'm sure that my stepdad is definitely, I don't know if he remembers this, but I was known for taking apart partly working computers, thinking I could fix them, never quite fixing them, and then leaving kind of the debris of computers. So, yeah.
Okay, so how did you get from that into technology?
So I finished my degree. I was quite ill in my last year, so I thought, oh, do you know what? I'll try to be a lawyer, but because as I said, quite conventional patterns in my family, and I thought, well, I'll try to do that. But I was very ill on my last year of university, and I almost dropped out, but I didn't. But I did kind of look around and think, well, where to next? And I got a place to study primary with humanities of a PGC. So I trained as a primary school teacher. And oh my goodness, primary school teaching is possibly the best way I have found to absolutely revolutionize the way that you give feedback, take feedback, and reflect on just how you are, because the qualification is so focused on reflection. You're every single day, it's about presenting something and learning from it. And I think I took a lot from that. And obviously I'm not a primary school teacher now, but yeah, it was a really good stepping stone. After that, obviously I didn't become a primary school teacher, but I got a grad scheme placement in a government funded tech company. And I got to work with some really interesting people, some absolutely amazing people, but I also then witnessed a few interesting things around business where chairs take over companies because of the way that things are being run in companies. That was quite interesting. I worked with a manager who was very focused on interoperability in tech, and we were rolling out a major system across Cornwall and Devon. How does the computer systems that speak to hospitals all link together? Whilst I was learning that, while you're working really hard, having fun is really important. And that sort of stuck with me. And then from there, I got a job at NHS Digital in Exeter. And I was about 2 months into the role, and some things happened at home, and I got offered a place to do the same job in Leeds. I've never been to Leeds before in my life, apart from for the one time that I'd been for my interview. So I packed up my polo. I drove all the way up to Leeds, which was the longest journey I'd ever been in with my polo. And I started at NHS Digital, and I worked on some really interesting, brilliant tech projects. So it was about business change and technology, and how do you use technology to kind of grow communication. And I worked with a brilliant boss who absolutely trusted me, pushed me, encouraged me. And then from NHS Digital, after that kind of encouragement and that kind of stretching my boundaries in that role, I ended up applying to Sky Bet. I actually submitted a very generic CV, and I got kind of placed in my first role. And I joined as an engineering manager working in infrastructure. That was a really interesting, brilliant role, working with our database team. I learned so much about that level in our stack. And then from there, I joined the data team in a similar role. So as another engineering manager role, working in our data science team. So very different technology. And then I was lucky enough to get the head of engineering and test role that I have at the moment in the data tribe. So yeah.
Right. I don't know where to start with my questions. Literally, I don't know where to start. But I am going to pick up on the fact that you, like Beth, you mentioned somebody who was a mentor, somebody who believed in you. Are you still in touch with that person, by the way?
You know what? I really wish I was, but I'm not. I probably need to. I don't think they're on LinkedIn. I wish they were. They were amazing. But I think I've been so fortunate to have some absolutely amazing mentors, and even just people I've met for coffee and had a chat in my career so far. When I was an engineering manager in Infra, I had a mentor who actually wasn't an SBG, an employee. She was outside the company, and we used to meet every couple of weeks in Browns for a cup of coffee, and she was amazing. Donna, if you're out there, thank you so much. I owe you so much. But yeah, brilliant lady, awesome conversation, and really supported me. And that really matters, I think.
Yeah, well, so that leads me on to my next question then. So how important do you think it is to have somebody who is a coach, mentor, ally to support you throughout your career, whether you're a male or female, I suppose?
Yeah, I think it's really awesome. Oh, sorry, my alarm is going off for some reason.
You need to be somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't know what is going on. Excuse me, let me silence my phone. Yes, I think it's really important. I also think it's important to look for diversity. So I've kind of always looked for what is it that I want to learn, or what have I seen in others that actually I want to learn about. And that does sound, may come across as a little bit self-indulgent, but I happened to be sitting in infra, and bearing in mind I was the only woman in the team. This is a familiar story, I think, in this group, but and I happened to see a lady walking through this bank of desks, and I was like, wow, this lady has presence. Wow, this, like, she knows, and she's definitely, like, she's got an aura. And it's actually somebody on this panel or somebody in this group, and I was lucky enough then to be mentored by that person for a period of time, and that set me up really. Like, I learned a lot about the way that they work and they present themselves, and they use that positive influence, and I was really inspired by that.
That's amazing. So going back to infra, that must be, of the many areas you could work as a female, that must be an area with really minimal female presence. How did that feel?
I think when I first started, it felt very lonely, especially as an engineering manager, but everybody was very welcoming. And I think we do, as a company, we do kind of talk about diversity and inclusion, and we try to learn, and it is something that is quite present, but it was very lonely. I'm always kind of a little bit aware of being the only one in the room, but the group made an effort, and I made an effort with them to kind of to build those relationships. But yeah, it can be quite lonely, I think.
It really can, yeah. Okay, so do you think it's harder to forget for a moment getting into technology? Do you think it's harder to progress through the ranks, as it were, as a woman in technology?
It's a really interesting question, because obviously I haven't been anything other than a woman, so I obviously have my perspective here. But I think it's about knowing what you want to learn and reaching then out to your network or to your group or to your support or to your manager to do that learning. I got this role. I applied for a few different roles at the level that I've got at the moment, and it was really interesting to get the feedback from that. So I would encourage people to look across, so look for the roles in different areas of a business that might interest you, that might be at the similar sort of level of responsibility, but also then when you're looking to apply for the next role, reaching out to the hiring managers, perhaps asking them what it is that they want from that role, people who are in that role, what do they do, and using then that as the foundation for your learning plan, I think, would be my top tip. But keep going, keep at it, you can do it. I think there's a grit and determination in that, and I'm not saying I've always had it, but it's definitely helped.
Right, so amazing. I'm sat here absolutely buzzing and so proud of you all to work with you. You've been so inspirational. Your stories are fantastic, and I think a few themes have come through really, really strongly. And the first one is, you don't need to come through the traditional routes to get into technology. Not one of you has done that. So it's never too late. You can always pivot, whether you're a man or a woman, never too late. So that, I think that's got to be really inspirational, and that's got to give us hope over those really low numbers of girls going into traditional STEM educational placements. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the benefit of having a mentor or an ally or a safe space or somebody that believes in you. That's coming through really strongly as well. And then the third thing for me, be brave, be bold, try different things, push yourself out of your comfort zone, and that ultimately gets you ahead and spreads your knowledge and experience. So thank you let's just go back to a couple of the objectives from the start. We wanted to showcase some of the amazing women who work at SVG, and you've all done that. And just to stress as well, there will be amazing women who work at SVG listening to this. They're everywhere, which is brilliant. But thank you so much for being open, honest, and transparent. And I think the second thing we wanted to do was showcase the plethora of different roles. There are so many more than we've talked about today, but it's not just about coding. There are so many more different roles. So with that in mind, your work on this panel for now is done. We are going to take a 5-minute break now. So if everybody would come back in 5 minutes from now, when you switch back on, you will see that there is a male panel in situ. And honestly, it's not to be missed. We did a mini walkthrough with them, and it's really fascinating to get their insights. So see everybody back here in 5 minutes. Thank you so much. Thanks.
So welcome back, everyone, and thank you to our women panelists for sharing their lived experience. Don't forget, if you've got any questions you'd like to raise with the panel, either this one or the women's panel, please pop them in the chat function and we'll do our best to answer them after this section. So, hi, my name's Michelle Taylor, and I'm fortunate to be joined by 3 men who work in tech here in SBG. They're all people managers. And now I understand that language is important to everybody when discussing topics like this, but please, can I ask that you give our panelists the benefit of the doubt if they don't always use the right word or phrase. It's a safe environment really for us to discuss, and we're all learning and evolving. So I'll start by asking the 3 chaps to introduce themselves. So if you'd like to go ahead, start with Paul.
Okay, hi, yeah, thanks for the disclaimer, Michelle. Yeah, kind of an intimidating environment, I'll be honest. But yeah, hi, I'm Paul Lilly. I'm the Director of Gaming Technology. So I guess Joe's equivalent over in the gaming tribe within SBG. So responsible for the tech function within our kind of gaming tribe that looks after our gaming products. I've been SBG for about 6 years now, all that time within technology and within gaming tribe. But moved around various roles in operations and QA, so can relate to a lot of this kind of stuff said previously on the women's panel. I also don't have a comp sci degree, so I feel like I'm in the club.
So hi, I'm Chris. I'm head of infrastructure for SBG. So I also work with Paul and work for Beth. So. And the interesting thing about infrastructure, I suppose, is it's not necessarily all about coding. There's lots of tech in infrastructure that's also a lot more hands-on, physical. We run data centers, networking equipment, servers. It's all the stuff that underpins everything that runs at Skybet. So it's quite a different but exciting environment. And I also don't have a computer science degree. I've got a degree in politics, which is actually surprisingly useful and relevant in my role. So yeah, it's definitely interesting that that's not necessarily the way to get into tech, I suppose. So yeah, and I've been at SBG for 2 years now, but overall in tech, I think for about 16 years I worked out earlier. So yeah.
Cheers, Chris. I guess to round us up, hello everyone. I'm Adam, head of delivery over in the customer tribe. So I'm very fortunate to be part of an awesome delivery team. And I get to lead that team, working directly with Joe on a day-to-day basis. And I also don't have a computer science degree, nor do I have a degree at all. I think my only technical qualification is I'm probably first line support for my mum on her Sky TV box. That's as technical as I get, really. But yeah.
Switch it off and on again.
Yeah, it tends to be that, but I don't tell her that because she thinks I'm an absolute hero.
Yeah, I can confirm your tech qualifications as well, Adam. So, but thanks for that, guys. Now we had some really pretty powerful stories there from all of the women there. So first of all, just to kick us off and get a conversation going, can I get your reactions on what you heard? Were you expecting that? Were you expecting anything different?
I don't want to start on a controversial point, but I don't know whether this is expected or not. But I was really surprised how relatable all the stories were. I think I was expecting. I don't think I was expecting that. Like I related to all of those stories. There were like a bunch of themes that I kind of pulled out. I'm sure we'll kind of get into, but yeah, I think that there was most of it was as true for me and kind of my story as it was for those women. And yeah, I wasn't expecting that, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of the stories that we heard, I think it's really disappointing, I suppose, that the world hasn't moved on that much. If I look back to my mother, for example, started in engineering in the 1970s, which wasn't computer engineering, but her experience, some of the things that happened to her aren't actually that different to some of the experiences that the women tonight have talked about, particularly things like the manager expecting Lisa to be doing pickup for her husband, from nursery and that kind of thing. It's really, really disappointing, and that's kind of stuff is still going on.
Great.
Yeah, I think the one that really struck me, that kicked me, was the frequent theme of not feeling like they've got confidence and not having kind of feeling lonely and not having kind of allies within the workspace. And that's something I've taken really for granted, and perhaps that's because we do work in a male dominated industry. And like, I remember my first day when I walked into the floor and I was in the gaming tribe. You look around and there's a load of chaps there who look like you and I, and it's so easy for you to just go up to them and start a conversation. And I think that was the one that really kicked me when the women were talking through it, was that. And I was like really reflecting on like what can we do? There's loads more we can do, right? And then it's what more can I personally do I'd hate to think that a woman in my team or a woman that I worked with on a day-to-day basis felt like that. But it's a product of the environment, I guess, is my assumption.
I agree. Why do you think that? I suppose what that says is that men aren't going out of their way to make women feel more comfortable. And do you have any thoughts on why you think that is?
Yeah, I think that's very true, and I think the diversity is a real problem. I mean, in my area, most of the people I work with are not only men, but they're white middle-aged men with families. So the level of diversity is practically zero, and it's really hard to sort of break people into that, and because get people comfortable joining that type of environment and feeling like that they can be included, despite being different. It's really hard.
I agree. I think there's also I think there's also a bit of like, I think there's it's a little bit taboo as well, which I think is probably something we should get into. That like I can kind of like, I think when we were prepping for this, Jo mentioned, she gave like an anecdotal thing of coming into a meeting room of all white middle class techie blokes talking about techie things and feeling quite lonely, and I can definitely sympathize with that. But I think there's almost a taboo nature of like, I don't want to break that because there's a woman in the room, because I feel like I'm stereotyping off the back of that. Like how do you avoid? I think what it boils down to is just having a bit of emotional intelligence, isn't it? And kind of understanding that someone might be feeling kind of a bit left out and trying to break the cycle. But there definitely is a taboo thing. I'd be very shocked if in the vast majority of cases, like any of that is remotely intentional. So I think it's about education, isn't it? How do we educate ourselves to be more inclusive?
I think a lot of men are completely oblivious to what it's like to be a woman in that scenario, because they're so used to being with people exactly like them that they just don't know. And to be fair, I've learned a huge amount through my wife and her experience. She's also a woman in tech, actually. And started in a SOC, which was a very male-dominated environment, and also complete, young men when she was coming back into the workplace after having had a baby. It's a completely different world, and I think she found that really hard to sort of feel like she could fit in. And things like, that they had male uniform, like it was in polo shirts, but it hadn't occurred to them to get any polo shirts that fitted women. So, she had to go and ask and have that conversation. They're like, well, the other women haven't asked about it, so we haven't done, and it's really, really horrible to have to be in that position. But yeah, a lot of men are just completely oblivious to it, I think.
That's a really good point, actually, you've made, Chris, about other women haven't asked, therefore they didn't think about it. Because one of the common themes that was coming through all of the women that were talking was around feeling like they weren't being heard, or they felt like they didn't have a voice. So what do you think we can do? Or especially yourselves, is there anything you feel you can do more of to ensure that women are given opportunities to make their voices heard? And I would like to add in brackets, it's not just women, it's the quiet people too that don't necessarily speak up.
For me, it boils down to that, like, as I said, emotional intelligence. It's about being able to look around a room and see like who is engaged here and who isn't, and how can I level the room a little bit. I think the reality is there's probably like training needed in that's not a skill that you just have by default, I think, or that everyone has by default.
Particularly engineers.
You've got to be able to read it. You've got to be able to read it to be able to action it, I suppose. And that's the thing. There are probably like strategic things we can do, like having, when you've got uniform, make sure there's a female version. That's kind of a quite straightforward one. But when you're talking about inclusion in a room, I think that comes down to I suppose sessions like this and education and understanding it, and having that emotional intelligence.
And I think, for me, just thinking about making sure that I'm always leading by example and always bringing people in, because I'm quite a loud person, and it's something I need to be very aware of, is making sure that I am, and I've seen people do it brilliantly, like some of the people in my team, making sure, like in a meeting, making sure everybody's involved and everybody's had a chance to speak, and it's so impactful when that's done well.
I think what this, by having these conversations, it makes us challenge some of the biases that are perhaps like unconscious biases that are perhaps coming through, and they're the things that are stopping us from creating that really inclusive culture, I think. And we can do some more purposeful stuff, like some of the stories, some of the women who are in the panel before, they're bloody awesome, like, and they've got some really very articulate, and they've got some really they've done some amazing things, and we should celebrate that, and we should create opportunities for women to really showcase their skills and showcase the things that they've been doing, and I think sometimes that will mean that men need to step aside a little bit, which is not a bad thing. And that's why I think I think there's more of the unconscious stuff, and I think we do that by having awareness, having better conversations like this, right? But then I think there's some more purposeful stuff that we can also do to really challenge and break that culture.
So this one's a little bit left field, and I'll apologise in advance because I'm kind of putting you all on the spot here, because we heard a lot about allyships and about people who believed in each one of those women and pushed them up. Do you see yourself as kind of being an ally? I'm going to be completely brutal, an ally for women in your team, being able to push them a little bit and give them that confidence?
Absolutely, but that's a two-way street, though. I see, like I see a lot of women on that panel were people who I consider allies and people who who I need to do my job. That's absolutely a two-way street. But yeah, I don't know if I'll answer the question there, but yeah, absolutely. I think I'm a little spoiled in that, like, I also have a kind of test background, and I think that I say historically in the last kind of, I suppose, sort of 10, 20 years or so, I think that's probably one of the areas of technology that's probably had the best representation of women. So I think I've probably been fortunate to have worked alongside a lot of women and seen the kind of the positives that come with that sort of diversity in your team. And I think there was one of the themes that kind of came up through that talk was around like the analyst part of a role, and that was a bit of a consistent theme. And analyst by its nature needs people with different perspectives. The outcome will be different depending on the person looking at that sort of thing. So I think within the test function, we've always kind of benefited from having a more diverse workforce, and I've definitely seen that firsthand. I don't know if I answered your question at all. I can't remember what your question was, Michelle. Sorry.
It's listen, just keep talking because this is really great stuff. I wish I could bottle it. So just keep going.
I think the thing for me is I sincerely hope that I support other women in my team. I mean, I think the challenge for me in infrastructure is there aren't many women really. I mean, I think in my entire area there's I think about three women, about something like that. So it's out of about.
Sorry to interrupt you, Chris, but out of how many? So that's 3 women out of how many?
I think it's 65 thereabouts.
Wow.
So it's a massive, you know, and so, you know, most of the people I interact with are men in my area, which I think is a real challenge, and I'd love to get more diversity in there. And we have had, you know, more women in the past. I mean, Rachel Morgan used to be in my area, and I did actually really value the diversity that she brought into the team, and the fact that she did bring a different set of skills and a different way of doing things. So I'd love to get some of that back in, but equally I do work in other teams that do have women in, and I hope that I do provide them support. It's certainly something I'm keen to try and make sure I'm doing. So it's hard to know whether you're doing well or not, I suppose.
One of the things I took away was encourage, again, there was another theme around taking risks, getting stuck in, looking for opportunities, taking risks, and definitely like it's a thing that stuck in my head of something I'm going to take away, and you know, encourage like women in my team to take risks where, you know, if they see opportunities, really encourage that. I think that's an important theme.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the one thing that also along those lines was around confidence and not feeling like they've got the confidence to do that. And I think that's we should be doing that with everyone, right? We should be with everyone that we're kind of managing or working with is helping them build the confidence, identifying the things that they're really strong at and going after them, at the same time also working with people to understand kind of where their kind of areas of opportunity are and working with them to build them up there as well. I think something that made this really real for me when Joe asked me to do this, I started reflecting on it. It was my daughter, and she's only 3, and she is an absolute firecracker. Like, you think I talk a lot, she talks a lot, and she's very strong. But in 15 years' time, if we're still having this same conversation, like something seriously like needs to change, doesn't it? And I think if I reflect on kind of the education system she's about to go through, and I'm reflecting when I was in school, history was all about blokes, you know, all the leaders that we were taught about and focused and studied in on were male. And I think over Christmas, Emmy got a book from someone, and it was a book about Michelle Obama and her path, basically. And I just thought that was amazing. Like, that was the first time, you know, that was a woman that you can read that book, she can understand her story, and there's so many more out there. And I think that's a key thing. I think early on in kids' development, like the young girls need to be exposed to women that they can really look up to and want, and they can form their own opinions of what a good leader looks like, rather than it always being a bloke. It can be a woman. And I think we need to expose children to that as early as possible. And then hopefully that will combat things like imposter syndrome, not feeling like they've got confidence. You know, that's where a lot of this for me starts there. And having Emmy's really opened my eyes up to it. And I really hope that she goes through an educational system that really celebrates women and gives her the confidence to do what she wants to do, whatever that is. I don't know, others think, like, reflecting on that.
Yeah, I've got a 5-year-old daughter as well, and I mean, she's not quite reading Michelle Obama's.
Emmy's not reading it, to be clear. Big
question that. But if she is, I don't think you need to worry, Adam. I completely agree. The kind of on the confidence point. Again, that was the kind of thing that stuck out for me. Is I hope that women know how that isn't just women. And that's probably there's probably a bit of a thing that we need to do around just breaking down the sort of stigma across the board. I was like fortunate enough to be part of a mentoring scheme this year, and I mentored a woman in the company, and you know, a lot of it was around that. It was around confidence and imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is a big theme, and like that's something I have in bucket loads, and you know, that we sort of developed a mantra of like everyone is blagging it all the time, you know, and I think men see that, or it's talked about more maybe, yeah, I think that there's a barrier to break down there that like this assumption that assumption that we don't have that, and we absolutely do, and you don't need to worry about that. We need to
I think part of the issue here is also societal expectation, and there's big differences between men and women, and I think, you know, from a young age, men are basically taught that they can get away with all sorts of stuff, whereas women are much more kind of, you know, feel like they have to fit into society and play a certain role. And I think that really affects how much confidence women have. So there's a whole, you know, how we fix that and how we, you know, get to a point where women feel, you know, don't feel like that. Yeah, I don't know. That's it's a feeling I get anyway.
Thanks for that. That's really fantastic stuff, and I'm aware that we've got about 5 minutes left. So just as a final shot from you all, if you were to obviously the getting the women in and getting girls interested in it is quite a big thing. So if you were to be in front of some young women who are deciding on what they want to do with their career, how would you convince them to come into tech? How could you tell them that it's different now? Or is it?
I think we're quite spoiled in SBG, because I think it is different. Granted, this conversation kind of has highlighted that there's still work to do, but I think we are genuinely spoiled. Like, I have been in front, so I was involved in our grad scheme for a number of years, and I have been in front of groups of young people, including large representation of women, trying to sell the Tech Academy and sell the business and why you should work for SBG. And to be honest, I didn't focus it on women. I'm not sure that I would. I think it's just a great inclusive place to be, and yeah, I think I guess the thing I would sell is that SBG value people and value personality and value what you bring to the table. It's not, you're not a CV, you're a person, and I think we do value that, and I think we are spoiled by that, and I think that's just a general message that I would use to bring women into this business.
Thanks, Paul.
But I think also the opportunity for women in tech is to bring something different and bring some diversity, because I think that's the thing that often we're missing is, having a difference of opinion, having somebody that comes in and goes, actually, why don't we do things this way that nobody's thought of because we're all the same, So I think that's really valuable to us.
Yeah, I think I'd always frame it as it's almost a superpower. That's the men don't have that, If I was doing it, we've got some amazing women in the organisation, and I think coming back to what I was saying around, I think for women to have aspirational people who are women and they can relate to instantly, I think would really help draw, and it might enable them to ask more questions that they otherwise might not do if it was a male stood at that front, kind of trying to tell you, how amazing SBG is. And so I think that's a big thing. I think having somebody stood at the front who you can relate to instantly would really help, and we've got an abundance of that, as clearly seen tonight.
Well said.
Yeah, thank you to all three of you. I think you've been really brave coming on here, not knowing what the what we were going to ask you or what was going to come up. But we've heard from you, and I think we're in good hands, but I think that's from an SB&G perspective. There's still more work to do, but we're definitely going in the right direction. And I'm not sure whether we're going to, so we're going to take a 2-minute break, guys, and everybody on the call. I shouldn't say guys, you know that thing about excusing the men for saying the wrong thing. Excuse me as well. So we're going to take a break for 2 minutes. Please go get a drink or have a toilet break, whatever you need to do. We'll bring all the panel back in. So we'll bring all the ladies in. We'll have the gents here as well. And we'll attempt to answer. I've seen the list of questions. There's a lot more than I thought we would get. So everybody who's on the panel as well, get yourself a drink, because there's some nice questions coming up. So thank you for that, everybody. And we'll see you in 2 minutes' time.
Hi everybody, we're back. Thank you so much to everybody on both panels. It's just been absolutely fascinating and inspiring in equal measure. And we do have some questions. We've got some statements and some questions. First one is more of a statement, but I'm going to ask people to comment on it. When women raise issues and are passionate, we nag. When men do it, they are leaders with gravitas. I have this a lot. I'm gonna stick Adam Potter. His face. What do you think about that, Adam? Women are passionate, they nag. When men do it, they're leaders with gravitas.
Very damning, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
It's very. I genuinely hope it's not reflective of where we work. However, in the stories that we went through earlier, I can't remember who it was, but someone did recall a similar scenario whereby they had said something. I think it was Famine, and Yeah, it's how do we challenge it? I think it comes back to what we were chatting in the men's panel around the biases, and people having a greater awareness for it. And I think one thing that I will take away from this is if I was to ever witness that, I'd feel compelled enough to challenge it, because I don't feel like that is right, and I think that's what it will take. So I think, yes, too right if the woman was to take that person up in one-to-one afterwards to challenge that behaviour, but also as a bloke and an ally and as a friend and in that space, I think it's on us to also challenge that where we see it in the right ways, of course.
Yeah, two things there, Adam. First of all, your face when I called your name out to answer that question was a picture. And secondly, that right there, that is why we're doing things like this, because you've just talked about on the basis of this, you would do something different. And that's brilliant. Next question for Beth. Has SBG previously offered, or are you currently exploring any returnship programs specifically aimed at women?
Okay, so I guess I'm taking on that. A returnship great scheme is to help people that have been out of work or on a career break or out of work for a period of time, whether that's carer responsibility, childcare, doing something from a personal perspective. So at the moment, it's definitely something that's on our roadmap to do, to look at returnship programs. So how do we encourage people that have been out of work for quite some time to have the confidence to come back into work and get roles that are suitable for them? The scheme isn't launched yet. It's kind of needs to go through a discovery phase to kind of understand a bit more. But I kind of would say watch this space, and it wouldn't necessarily just be for women. But we are looking at different schemes for women, but absolutely something that's on the agenda to do, just not in place as yet.
Thank you, Beth. The third question, I'm happy to answer this myself. Are there any incentives at SBG that focus on women in leadership? So actually, we're just about to launch something on women in leadership. So our Director of People Services has been working on something in the background, and we have some sessions in for coaching women in leadership. So I think that's going to be really brilliant. But alongside that, I think to expand on this event, this is not a one-off thing that we're doing for women in tech. It's part of a series of things that we want to have as always on. So we are going to be standing up a women in tech mentoring scheme. We are going to do things like this on a regular basis. We are actually looking at the moment at working with an external partner to bring more women into technology. So we're doing lots of things, not just this event. So really good question there. Next one. This is a very interesting conversation. Fantastic that this session is happening. I think a women's network needs to be set up within SBG for mentoring, coaching, helping women gain confidence, as imposter syndrome is definitely a massive issue for women. So I think I've just ticked that one off. We are going to be doing things like that. And a couple of people did mention imposter syndrome, but I don't think that's just a women thing. I think men can also suffer from imposter syndrome. Also, perhaps fast track people who are joining from outside of IT. I have a friend who is interested in a job at SBG. She's currently a social worker, lots of transferable skills, but where would she start? So I'm going to hold that thought and then move on to the next question. Do SBG offer entry-level jobs for people without tech experience? Adam, I'm just wondering, sorry, it feels like I'm coming to you again, but you've just been involved in implementing a delivery apprentice scheme, and that ticks some of these boxes. Do you want to talk briefly about that?
Yeah, of course. So so we've introduced delivery apprenticeships. So we've got 4 delivery apprentices joining Sky Betting Game from the 1st of February, which is absolutely awesome. There's an equal split, actually, funnily enough. There was no targets, quotas or anything for male-female split. And that was all off the back of a reflection. We looked at the delivery discipline for the organisation, about 120 people big across SBG, I think, or 100, 120. And the large proportion of people are male, and the large proportion of people have significant experience or come with 4 to 5 plus years of experience. And so we acknowledge that we need to diversify the opinion and the thoughts and the people who work with us. And the idea that we had was, let's open up a delivery apprenticeship and tap into a completely different market, a completely different set of people that otherwise we would be working with on a day-to-day basis. So that is something that we have done. We're committed to these people start on the 1st of February, and I personally can't wait.
Thanks, Adam. Sorry, no, please, Beth.
Yeah, just going to add in just that's fantastic around the apprenticeships, and we're really excited by this. There's been some great work, but there's also things we do to kind of look at underrepresented groups in terms of how we can have boot camps or training programs to bring people in. And I guess from the tech graduate program perspective, we learned a lesson around, we used to ask for a computer science or kind of related degree. We changed that to be any degree to kind of encourage and make it more accessible. So we're always iterating and looking at different opportunities to bring entry level in.
Thanks, Beth. That was perfect. Okay, what have we got next? When I worked in Boots IT, 600 strong team, very few women and none above middle management. We kicked off women in IT and we had many interesting sessions. One of the main issues that kept cropping up was confidence, hence the massive need for someone to back you and have belief in you. We all said men would go for a role where they may be able to tick only 60% of the requirements and have the confidence to learn on the job. And we all said we wouldn't go for a role unless we could tick 100% of the requirements. I've worked for many bosses where I thought I would have performed much better with more skills. Imposter syndrome is key for many of us. We need supporters that champion women in a male-dominated environment. And great statements. And I think we can meet that in two ways. One is, you've said on the male panel, Paul, Chris and Adam today, that you, having heard that, are going to be stronger champions for women and just be more aware of how it might feel to be one woman in a meeting with 20. And then we've talked about the fact that we are going to be standing up a women in tech mentoring scheme. And actually, Chloe, if I remember correctly, suggested we have some sessions on improving confidence and finding your voice. And we've actually looked at that with our skills team as well. So there's loads of opportunity to do more. We want to be better at this. Okay, more questions. Fabulous session. Hearing the inspirational backgrounds of the panel members and their personal accounts of their career paths and challenges is really enlightening and motivating. Well done to all involved. Brilliant, well done. Can changes be made at grassroots level? I am one of the women in Chris's team. Ooh, Chris. I would be definitely interested in championing helping women feel confident in joining a fulfilling career in tech. SVG needs to shout out about how they are flexible. I'm a single mum of 3, recently working full-time for SVG, and their flexibility means this is achievable. And that is one of the amazing things about working at SVG. The flexibility is just, it's endless, isn't it? Does anybody want to make a comment on that?
Yeah. For me, like, I started at SVG 3 months before COVID hit, went through that period of homeschooling, you know, that absolute hell that if you've been through it, you know what I'm talking about. But SVG, they couldn't do enough to help to make it more flexible. You know, there were offers of equipment if people didn't have the things that they needed at home. You know, I had my laptop and a 5-year-old Chromebook, which we got by with, but there were people out there without the tech that were getting it from work to help, you know, be able to flex my hours around homeschooling and school calls and that kind of thing. But even now, like, I can do the school run most days, or, you know, I can drop her off, I can pick her up. And, you know, if somebody puts a meeting in at 3 o'clock, you know, not every day, but some days I'm like, I'm really sorry, I can't, I've got to do the school run. And it's just not even it's not an issue, you know, it gets moved. And, you know, there are a lot of companies out there that aren't as flexible as we have been. But honestly, as a company, we've offered so much to people and helped people so much, not only through COVID and, you know, the real height of the pandemic, but, you know, future ways of working and how flexible we're being.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, a couple more. One from Natasha. Thank you all. Let's keep the conversation going. And then on a similar theme, actually, this one's from somebody called Luke. How do we normalize these conversations? Prior to the male panel speaking, we referenced allowing forgiveness for saying the wrong thing. How do we educate and give confidence to men in the industry to feel more comfortable opening up and talking about their experiences? What do you think about that? How do we normalize these conversations? Because this is brilliant as I'm going to call it a one-off, and we do intend to do more things like this, but it can't just be at events that we talk about these things. So how do we make this more normal? Paul, do you have a view?
I knew you were going to pick me. I genuinely don't know, other than talking about it more often. And I don't think there is a silver bullet. I think it requires, you've got to keep putting the effort in until you don't have to put the effort in. And I think we just got to keep rocking up and talking about it until it becomes normal. I don't think there is a magic pill. It's just that. Sorry, I feel like I should have a more insightful answer, but I think it's good old hard work.
Yeah.
I agree.
Anybody else?
Yeah, sorry to chip in. I totally agree with Paul. I think you have to be vulnerable, don't you? And you have to have hands up. I'm not sure how to approach this, or is there more I can be doing, or I need to understand more. And I think the more, like Paul said, the more you do it, it becomes the norm, and then there isn't such an issue anymore. It's just an open and transparent environment. Everybody knows how to work together, and all's good.
I think the presence of more women being there brings about the more natural conversations. Like being the only woman in my team, we have these conversations quite a lot, and they often say, oh, I didn't see that, or I didn't understand that perspective. But if those points of views aren't there, they don't hear them, and if you don't have the conversations, they don't hear them.
Thanks, Chloe. Okay, we have one last question from Luke. We've spoken about mentorship. Do any of the female panel mentor men? And do they think this does or could help as much as mentoring women?
Can I answer that?
Yes.
Jo. So I do mentor men at the minute. I've got 2 that I mentor quite closely, and one that's kind of moving on and getting a lot more. And I think the 2 that I've got now are both saying that they welcome the different insights that they get. So I think that's another way that we can keep driving those conversations, is around us as, I'm going to label us all now, we're strong women. We are strong women. And I think by mentoring men in our industry, we can make it a better place for the next generation coming up, not just the next generation of girls, but the next generation of men as well, so men and women.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. And I'm not sure, did you get an intro? It's just struck me you might not. So Michelle is lead architect and does a fantastic job in Customer Tribe, working with me. So if I am sorry for missing that out. You're one of the phenomenal women who work in tech at SVG. Okay, I've got another question through from Oliver. It would be great to run this event again, but include other companies and industries. I think SVG has so much to share. Does anybody, Rachel, what do you think about that?
Yes, that would be awesome. Call out to anybody who's watching the playback to this, or sees any of the awesome branded comms, or any of the comms on any of our platforms about this. Approach us, talk to us. We'd love to hear your perspective. We're always interested in learning. I think that's one of the awesome things about Sky Bet. Certainly one of the things that's kind of kept me continually engaged in working here. So we'd love to hear from you.
Brilliant, thank you. And it's something, this is not a one-off. We're committed to looking at bringing more women into tech, but making ourselves a much more diverse and inclusive workplace. Again, going back to, we know we need to do better. As part of our tech strategy, we have a pillar which is about SVG being the best place you've ever worked. And there's so much going on under that, because we truly believe this should be. And for me, this is the best place I've ever worked. We're done on questions now. So I just wanted to ask Christos Gale, do you think on the back of this, you will do anything differently in the workplace?
Yes, I think it's made me think a lot about how I am in meetings, and making sure that I'm representing women's views, and things. I mean, the one thing that really stood out for me, which is something my wife has also mentioned, is the heap-eating. I think Famine called it, where a woman says something and then a man repeats it and everybody listens to the man. And the thing that's occurred to me is I've never noticed it happen. But what really worries me about that is, has it happened and I haven't noticed it? And I really want to get better at being more aware of what's going on, so that I can challenge it, because, you know, the famous saying is the behavior you walk past is the behavior you accept, and I certainly wouldn't want to be accepting that kind of behavior. And similarly, you know, I want to make sure that I'm helping women be represented in the meetings that I'm in, interactions in. And I'd also be really interested in mentoring some women if I can get that opportunity. So that's something I'm
right. Your name's on the list, Chris. You've said it now.
Yeah, I can't take it back.
Thank you. So, and Adam, you already said earlier on, absolutely, you're going to do things differently on the back of this. Do you want to recommit to what that might be? Can you remember?
Yeah. I think the big thing for me, so up until getting asked to do this, I didn't think I could have an opinion on this as a man. And I was so nervous about this. The fear of saying the wrong thing, or, you know, having the right intent but not saying it in the right way. And I think, if anything, what this has encouraged me to do is perhaps have the conversation with the men in my team about it, and just ask them, like, what are your opinions on this? Like, what are your opinions on women in tech? Are we doing enough? Are you doing enough? What are the small things that we can do? And just challenging men in that way. And so I feel like I can now talk about this. And that's the biggest takeaway for me from tonight. And I hope that we can, I hope this can become a current conversation within the organisation, something that, you know, Paul was saying, how does this stick? Well, it sticks by talking about it.
Thanks, Adam. And Paul, anything that you think you might do differently?
So I'd echo those things. I really the same. I was nervous coming onto this for the same reasons Adam mentioned. But I really the main takeaway I've taken from it is it's really been an icebreaker for me. Like, I feel like I can talk about it more now. It's been really good hearing stories. I'm in meeting rooms. I'm going to be like a hawk, like looking out. You know, you'll see me staring at you, trying to figure out, like, you know, what's going on. And see if I can kind of adapt my behaviors and that kind of emotional intelligence angle. But I'm also I'm gonna try and make sure that where women in my team want to take risks and push themselves, so that those opportunities are there. And like, that's a really inspirational thing I got from everyone on the panel, is that they had people who supported them taking risks, and I want to be one of those people.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. Before I wrap up, do any of our women panel want any last words?
I think for me, it's been really interesting to hear from the gentlemen on this panel, because as a business analyst, I'm constantly thinking about empathy and, you know, how do I empathize with my stakeholders, and how do I think of all those different perspectives and wear those different hats. And I guess a lot of, you know, all the gentlemen on here have displayed doing that. So just thank you so much for taking the time to want to listen to us, and then also want to do something off the back of what we've said today. So that in itself is magical. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Famina. So just going back to what we wanted to try and get out of this evening, we wanted to celebrate some of the amazing women at work who work at SVG. We've done that. Thank you to every lady on this panel. You've been phenomenal, inspirational, and your story has triggered some people on this panel to do things differently, and I'm sure people who are listening as well. We wanted to share a little bit more about the broad spectrum of roles in tech, that it's not just about coding. We wanted to highlight some of the difficulties that women in tech can encounter at times. I think we've done that really well. And we wanted to get the opinion of men on what they've heard. What we've tried to do is make this an event with a difference by bringing everybody into the conversation. Women in tech, talking to other women in tech about how difficult it is to be a woman in tech, changes nothing. The fact that we've invited men into the conversation to listen, I have hope that things will be different. And that, backed with the things that we do at SVG and the fact that we want it to be the best place you've ever worked, I think we can make a real difference. So massive thanks for everybody on the panel. You've been amazing. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who's taken the time to listen live or to listen to this back. It's really appreciated. Thanks so much.